I will. Thank you very much. Does this help a little bit? Good deal. Before I begin, I will draw your attention to a couple of things on the table that will either answer questions or perhaps stimulate them, but it will save me a little time not to have to present the material that you can easily read and take with you, sort of a crib sheet on American public media. But let me begin by thanking you for three things, and all of them important. First, thank you for the invitation. I love coming to Atlanta. I got as much sleep last night as I usually get. I have, and this is just a bit of insight to my life. I have two daughters. I've been married 28 years. I have two daughters. One's 24 and the other is 7. Yeah. So my life's really interesting. And I have a generational view on how our kids consume media, both from my daughter, who will be married in November, and my other, who will be a second grader next year. I get a pretty good view of how American kids, or at least my kids, my two daughters, are consuming media. Thank you for inviting me to talk about American public media. Thank you also for listening. Yes, thank you for listening. Listening is something that, well, many of us don't do very well. And when you take the time to listen to WABE, or you take time to watch the public television station, or when you take time to listen to a public radio program, whether produced by American Public Media or by others, you're making a gift of something that is very precious to all of us, and that is our time. When you invest your time with a public broadcaster, you are validating, first for yourself, that it has some value to you, and then for anyone else who's listening and for the organization that cared enough to produce and broadcast that material. So thank you for listening. And most importantly, certainly thank you for your support of public radio. Your gifts really do matter. Now, people say that. I have been in public broadcasting, as John said, for more than 20 years, and I never tire of meeting with people who love public radio enough to go to the pocketbook for public broadcasting. And each of you have, and on behalf of, I'm sure, everyone at WABE and certainly at American Public Media, thank you so much for your gifts to public radio. The accountability to our audience, the direct connection that public broadcasters have with those of you who listen and then go beyond listening and become members is terrific. It is the lifeblood of what we do, and I want to talk a little bit about that today. I'm not going to spend too much time introducing me. John did a terrific job of hitting many of the points. I did want to take a little time to talk about how I came into public broadcasting or public media. I was asked shortly after I graduated from college, from undergrad, I was given an opportunity to build a radio station. Not many people have that opportunity. And as a student and as a journalism grad, I thought that would be a terrific way for me to have a unique experience. And I was offered the opportunity by Minnesota Public Radio to build the 6th station in their then just nascent network in a small town in northern Minnesota. And I found an office and rented a desk and went out to this transmitter and helped put the wiring together and ordered the equipment and got out a soldering iron, and we built a radio station. We got volunteers involved, and we ordered pizza during the pledge drives, and we really went on the air with a radio station in a place that had not had a public radio station previously. And that experience was indelible for me early on in establishing at a gut level what public broadcasting can mean to a community and to a group of people who care enough to put their collective energies and collective resources together to make something happen in a community without whom it just wouldn't happen. And your legacy, your connection to WABE, lo these 50 or 60 years after public broadcasting came to Atlanta, is that direct connection to someone and to your previous generations who had that commitment, coming together, collecting resources and passions to put a radio station and a TV station on the air here that now you and everyone else in the community can enjoy. American Public Media is distinct from other national public media organizations principally by one thing, and there are probably many things that we can talk about, but we're the only national public media organization that owns and operates radio stations. National Public Radio produces and distributes many great programs. Many of them you hear here in this community. Public Radio International is another distributor that brings programs to radio stations around the country. But neither PRI nor National Public Radio own and operate radio stations. And we believe that that creates for American public media a direct kinship with other public radio stations, because we wake up every day, like most of you do, listening to a local public radio station and caring first about what that local community service is in that community. So we believe that with American public media and the local stations that we're involved with, that we think the same, because we serve local communities first. Yes, we produce national programs and we're proud of them, but we wake up every morning and we go to bed every night responsible for the operation and the service to a local community. We're proud of our association with WABE. Many of the programs that Jon mentioned are carried on this program. In fact, probably all of them that you mentioned are carried, and some of them on the list that are in front of you we can talk more about. But really, to begin my formal remarks, I want to pick up on something that I've heard Milton Clipper say. I wrote it down, and it says, "Service to others is a responsibility that we proudly embrace." Now that's got to be a deep value that Milton carries, and it's something that really resonates with American public media. A couple of words in there: service and responsibility. And I hope as we talk a little bit today, you'll get a sense for American public media's motivation and for understanding why it is we do what we do. It's often easy to describe what an organization does and even how it's done or what success it has. But I'd like, if you'll indulge me a bit today, to talk a bit about why it is we do what we do, and perhaps make a connection between American public media's core values and how we see communities and service, and how you all think about your community service and your public broadcasting right here in Atlanta. I'm going to put my remarks in the context of a couple of simple statements. Let's see if I can get this to work. I like statements that start with "we believe," because they allow us to be accountable, and you can challenge me on whether our behavior matches what we claim is our belief. So I'm going to share with you 3 beliefs today from American public media, and I trust and I really believe, because I know the people of WABE and I know the people of Atlanta well enough to understand that I think we're going to have a connection here. But really, I want to be accountable and take questions on the 3 things that we believe. We believe in the power of public radio. American public media's mission is to enrich the mind and nourish the spirit, expand the perspectives of our audience, and thereby assist our audience in strengthening their community. E.B. White, when he wrote to the Carnegie Commission in 1967 as they were forming the Public Broadcasting Act, wrote this, and it's been oft repeated, but I find it still inspirational, that public broadcasting should arouse our dreams, satisfy our hunger for beauty, take us on journeys, enable us to participate in events, and present great drama and music. It should restate and clarify the social dilemma and the political pickle, and address itself to the ideal of excellence and not the ideal of acceptability. Now, E.B. White, inspiring words from him, created a vision for public broadcasters and set it before us. And I believe that public radio and public television are great media, great mediums to pursue E.B. White's high aspirations for Americans as he was writing it to the Carnegie Commission. But audiences often ask me, and I trust that you will, after we've talked about what we do and how we do, they ask me why we do it. And so I'd like to talk a little bit today about why we do a few things. And I'm not going to talk about specific programs, but I'm going to talk about themes that underlie these programs. Why do we in public broadcasting do news? Thomas Jefferson said, "When the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government." We do news because we believe in an informed democracy. Now, we may not be the only one who believes that. These beliefs are not necessarily singularly held by us, but these are our motivators. We believe that fair, accurate, and balanced journalism gives people information to make informed decisions. We believe that in a world where most messages are filtered and most people seek out opinions that only confirm what they already think and believe, that a source for trusted news is important. It's important to democracy. So why do we do news? Why do we have a full-time news and information station in Minneapolis-St. Paul and 16 other full-time news and information stations all over Minnesota? And why do we produce national news programs? Because we believe in an informed democracy. And radio and radio programming and now the internet is, we believe, a terrific way for us to make that contribution. Our distinct approach to news, that is American public media's distinct approach to news, is based on a simple idea. And that simple idea is that somewhere in our audience, whether in Minnesota or listening nationally, somewhere in our audience, someone knows more about what we're reporting than we do every single time. We believe in the power of the knowledge of our audience. We believe that smart people listen and that somebody knows more than we do about every story that we're reporting. And that if we can engage that knowledge, if we can build trust with those audience members, and we can get you, because you are in the audience as well, if we can get you to share that knowledge with us and inform our journalism, that the reporting will be better and that the public service will be superior. We believe in an engaged audience, civil discourse and dialogue among people who care about issues in the community, and our role to facilitate that. We believe that citizens can inform the news through their knowledge, not just through opinion, not just through the public square, but by actually sharing with one another and sharing with a trusted news provider what knowledge you have about particular issues. I can talk more about public insight journalism. There's a little card in front of you that allows you to become part of the Public Insight Network and share with us what you know. We have now more than 60,000 people who are in the Public Insight Network, each sharing with us things that they know best because of their experience or their training or their professional engagement. We create forums for civil discourse, all of which is to engage our audience and help us understand what our audience knows. We do news because we believe in an informed democracy. We believe that audience members can contribute to this, and that if you will share your information and your knowledge with us, that the entire broadcast, the entire journalism, the entire story and reporting will be superior. We also do classical music. Why do we do classical music? Abraham Lincoln closed his first inaugural address at a time of great crisis in this country. And he called his countrymen at that time to be touched by the better angels of our nature. I love that turn of phrase. It's the very last sentence of Lincoln's inaugural, his first inaugural. I believe classical music beckons us and beckons the better angels of our nature for us. Now, think about that. That's grant language, right? That's printed on some kind of funding proposal somewhere, I'm sure. But I actually believe it. My wife is a classically trained musician. She's a music therapist. My wife works at Presbyterian Homes. She's a music therapist working principally with adult dementia. She uses music as the universal language to stimulate that far recess of the mind that only music can reach. It goes to the soul of us. It inspires. It elevates. It moves. It transports. It expresses our deepest emotion and our greatest elation. Now, it might not be classical music for you, but some form of music reaches you. I've yet to meet someone who is completely against all music. Classical music, we believe, is an expression of great art. And it fits the medium that we have. It fits broadcasting really well. We believe that classical music is our best opportunity to provide free access to great art in the communities we serve. Think about the number of ways that great art is actually accessible in the communities where you live. Fewer and fewer opportunities. Museums, you can go down a long list of noble and worthwhile organizations that are committed to great art. Few of them are as accessible as turning on the radio in your car, in your home. And when great art can come out of that radio, we believe that a bit of inspiration, just a bit of that better angel of our nature, is beckoning for each of us. And it is beneficial for more than just the music itself. It does something to us as humans. So we believe in great art and free access to that great art in the communities we serve. It is what inspired at least the monks of St. John's Abbey and University to start a radio station back in 1967 and give birth to Minnesota Public Radio. St. John's Abbey and University is out in the middle of Minnesota, a little town called Collegeville. Back in 1967, they had a record library. That's about all they had, and they were enjoying it. But someone had heard about a newfangled technology called FM radio. AM was all the rage back in the 50s and 60s, but in 1967, FM was just kind of getting formed. You had to order it special with your car. It didn't come. AM came with your car. But one of the monks thought that maybe there would be something to this FM and got a student by the name of Bill Kling to put an FM station together on their campus. Why? To share the great symphonies of the world with the farmers of central Minnesota. And that's what happened. That music, that sharing of the cultural wealth of that campus through great music on records, inspired the farmers to write checks and become members and support something that they felt bonded them together in something that is greater than any one of us. The music, the great music of the masters in classical music. We believe in classical music. We also believe that public service strengthens communities. Public radio's defining strength is public service. And so as the second we believe statement, we will believe, and we do believe, that public service strengthens the communities we serve. You know, a free marketplace and capitalism are fundamental values of America, and we all respect those and embrace them. But public safety and public information and public health, these are not things that many of us trust the free marketplace or capitalism to provide for our communities. And in many cases, capitalism and the free marketplace will not provide public education, public safety, and public health. Nor do we believe that the free marketplace of ideas will provide free information and great art. We just don't think it will happen because there have been 200 and plus years of history now in this country, and it hasn't. So the marketplace, while terrific, and we embrace it, and we practice all the tenets of capitalism and a free marketplace and a free economy, there are still some things that those tenets, as strong as they are, will not provide for a community. We operate non-commercial radio stations and produce public service programming that capitalism and the marketplace just would not motivate or would not support of their own interests. You know, commercial media's commitment to great journalism and great art is eroded. Many reasons we could talk about. Others who have far greater authority on this than I do. Many of you probably in the room could give chapter and verse as to what's going on with newspapers in this country. Thousands of jobs lost. Great institutions, even like the Atlanta Constitution, still under significant crisis economically in terms of the way their funding models are changing and the disruptive technologies. It must be really hard to be in an industry where the consumption of your product has never been greater and the threats to your very being have never been greater. And that's what newspapers are facing all over this country. Public media is not immune from those same challenges, but we should take some example from the commercial marketplace on what will happen when a venture capitalist can buy a newspaper and divest it as if it were any other kind of company and put at risk the information that the community relies upon to make informed decisions and govern itself, or to build up the great institutions that really bind together most of us in the communities where we live. So we believe that public service strengthens communities. The third belief is our fundamental belief in strong local institutions. American public media depends on strong public broadcasting stations all over the country, not just for our national programs, but for the very existence that we have in sort of the sisterhood and brotherhood of public service media. Essential institutions in their community all over the country are what makes public service media possible. Any one station, no matter how popular or how successful, really can't do it alone, can't do it itself. And we believe that one of the bedrock values, certainly a bedrock value for American public media, but a bedrock value for building strong local community institutions is stewardship. And I want to talk a little bit about stewardship, not because you're all donors, but I want to talk about it in ways beyond the money. Stewardship is about transparency. Stewardship is about accountability, to making a promise and being held accountable for that promise, for saying what you're going to do and doing it, and for taking into account an opportunity to build an institution that will outlast whatever contribution you're going to make to it, in your time, in your talent, or in your resources. Stewardship is about seeing something beyond the self-interest. And stewardship informs a great deal, if not everything, that we do at American Public Media, because we believe that when it comes to those people who listen and who give time and who give talent and who give money to public media, that those are very precious resources. Your time, your money, your talent. You may have virtually an infinite number of choices where to put those things, but you choose to put them to some extent into public media. And that builds the strength of this local community institution. You're not shipping your dollars somewhere else. You're not investing your time somewhere else. You're not investing your talent somewhere else. You're investing it here in a local institution that others before you have cared about and that you now care about with passion and with your time and your talent and your resource. We can only be strong in practicing our stewardship if we operate accountably. Being accountable with every dollar that's donated, being accountable with every program we put on the air, being accountable with every business decision we make. Doesn't mean everyone agrees with it, but it means we can be accountable, that there's a reason, and that we can explain that reason, and that it's not capricious or self-serving, and that it is focused on building strength in the local community. Stewardship requires transparency and accountability, getting the greatest value for every minute that's invested by our volunteers, for every talent that is invested in our programming, and for every dollar that's contributed by every donor. And Minnesota Public Radio and American Public Media were established on that value of stewardship, as I said, back to the 1967 origins with the monks at St. John's Abbey, and we continue to respect and honor that value of stewardship today. I'm confident, because I know the people who work here, and I know the people, I've met some of you, and I know people who live in Atlanta. I'm confident that you share these values with us. I'm confident that I will find kindred spirits in the room, that you believe in the power of public radio, and you believe in public service, and you believe public service strengthens communities, and you also believe that strong local community institutions make the entire community stronger. I'd like to believe that you share our value for an informed democracy and for free access to great art in the communities we serve. I'm sure some of you do. And you believe that a shared public service enterprise deserves support of our audiences and our communities. You've all demonstrated that with your personal commitment. And I know that many of you, if not all of you, also try to evangelize others in getting them to first listen and then to give and to become part of this shared public service enterprise. On your website, there's a statement that says, "Great cities are known by their museums and theaters, symphonies and parks, but the greatest impact on a city's cultural life radiates invisibly through the air." American Public Media is proud to be part of WABE's radiance in this community. And by working together, I'm sure that we're going to radiate even more, and we're going to inspire and enlighten and inform even more people. It is my pleasure to be with you today, and I'll be happy to take any questions. Anyone? Someone warned me. There we go. The question, if I need to restate it for anyone who didn't hear, are the programs listed on the one sheet, are they freestanding units, or, and I think by that you mean separate business units? Yeah. What level of autonomy do they have? We've decided that our value is not in being a holding company, that the expertise that we can collect around as many of the activities that we have really deserves to be available to any of the activities. So we are not a confederation or an association. We're an operating organization. We're only involved where we think we can add strategic value. Now, most of the ideas for the programs that are created didn't come from us. They came from a talented person who walked in the door and said, "I got a great idea for a program." And somebody in the organization was smart enough to say, "Let me hear more about that." Thousands of ideas come in the door, and a few of them someone takes notice of, that is, encourages or it germinates and it's allowed to grow. There are producers for each of the programs, and those producers have, in the case of any of our news programs, the journalists have a complete firewall from any influence of the organization on their journalistic decision making, what guests they're going to put on the air, what questions are going to be asked, how they're going to do the reporting. But we are not what would be a collection of independent activity. We are an integrated whole. And in fact, across many programs, we actually share staff. So there may be people who work on a number of programs. Certainly the technical staff supports all the programs, but there may be producers or reporters who work on 2 or 3 of our programs. We believe if they have that talent and if they're a great business reporter, that story should just as easily be on Marketplace as it might be on Weekend America. Krista Tippett, for example, in Speaking of Faith, which might impress you as a very narrow kind of interest. Krista Tippett has appeared on many of our programs, commenting on various aspects through the social and the spiritual and religious dialogue that might inform that discussion. Religion and politics today come crashing together. So in many of the news cases, we'll ask Krista Tippett to make a comment on it. Chris Farrell, who works on Marketplace as a senior economist, he reports on our local radio station and works in that way. So generally, I would say that we don't have any separate business units. Now, we do individual accounting because we're accountable to funders and we're accountable to other institutions and organizations to keep close track of what resources are actually expended or collected for any one of these activities. But it is actually part of a total organizational view, not separate units. Other questions? Yes. Yeah, I won't answer for WAB in terms of their local programming, but I can give you the answer that I give to any of the audiences that ask me that question about Minnesota Public Radio's programming or that are specifically addressing something within a national program. And I think this basically holds for most public broadcasters. Audiences have an expectation for balance that it be in the moment. Now, that would be good if you could accomplish it, but it's often not the smartest way to actually present an idea. Take our morning talk show, Mid-Morning, Carrie Miller. She'll present a topic for an entire hour. And while if it's a particularly politically controversial topic, you might think that you'd have to bring in, someone from each side if there's only 2 sides, and most of the time we know that there's not just 2 sides. There's a myriad of angles and perspectives in there. But most of the time we've found that the audience information, that the actual understanding of an issue is superior if you bring in someone who has a particular view on that topic and give them the opportunity to truly understand their perspective. And then tomorrow or the next day or maybe next week, bring in someone whose opinion might contradict or clash or might provide a different perspective if it's not in direct opposition. What's hard for audiences is they might have heard the program on Tuesday and not heard the program on next Wednesday, and their perception then is that we're not balanced. And we can't expect audiences to listen 24 hours a day to hope that they will achieve that balance, but we do believe that over time, taken in its totality, we can certainly defend and put forward that the issues and that the stories and that the ideas that are presented are covered in as many diverse ways as we can to present this idea of balance. Now, the Internet has been a great help to that because the Internet, through podcasting or through time shifting, allows you to post your story or post that. You can put that 1 hour's worth of midday that came out on Tuesday, and if you missed it, you can then listen to it after you've listened to the other view. Within a single news story, it's a little harder. And that's often where we get the criticism. I don't know how it holds here in Atlanta, but I know how it holds in Minnesota and how it holds nationally. The audience is basically divided in thirds along the political spectrum right now. That is for almost all of public broadcasting. It varies by 5 percentage points plus or minus. But about a third of the audience self-describes themselves as conservative. This is wherever I speak and whomever we talk to. And the survey data supports this. About a third of the public broadcasting audience is self-described as conservative. About a third self-describes as progressive or liberal or some other form of, shall we say, left side of the political aisle. And there's another third that just refuses to be pegged on a political spectrum. Many times they will describe themselves as independent, but they won't mean independent capital I, they'll mean independent small I. And so we have, I would say, over the course of a year, probably equal number of critics from each of those three audience bands. We don't think that proves anything, but it is interesting that we are as likely to be criticized for a conservative point of view as we are to be a liberal point of view. Now, conventionally and typically, the reputation is that public broadcasting leans left. And what I say is, this is part of stewardship and accountability and transparency. Bring on the criticism. Bring on the examination. If we are left, we don't intend to be and don't want to be, so point out to us where you think that's happening. And in a civil dialogue, let's try to, if it's broken, we want to fix it. And if it's not broken, or if you have a particular view on that, we want to give you whatever information we have that we think might enlighten that criticism a bit. But I believe that we should not only be able to withstand the bright light of that scrutiny, but we should welcome it. Because public broadcasting really has to serve the entire community and not one part of it. I'm not sure that answers all the question, but sure. Table down there. 40, yes.
And how did that come about? And where did the funding come from those stations?
It came up.
And how many of those stations are dual format, and what do you think of dual format?
So an easy one and a loaded one. First, the question of how it came about. It came about one at a time, and it came about motivated almost entirely by the local community. Many times, in particular in the case of Minnesota, we would have a small community group. Once it got started, it was infectious. And it kind of built first around a group of about 5 or 6 college and university presidents in the state of Minnesota, not through any consortium or any shared agreement, but sort of by following the leader. Once St. John's University established this radio station and then had the foresight to say, we're not going to subsidize this forever, and embracing capitalism and free market, the free marketplace said, if it's going to be viable and sustainable, the community will have to support it. So we will give the radio station space on the campus, but the community will have to pay its bills. And that's what St. John's did in providing a separate and independent operation and a governance for the first station, which was KSJR. Then Concordia College, about 100 miles up the highway, heard about that and thought, we've got a college station that's not performing as well as we'd like it to. What if we did that? And that's how the conversation started around the state of Minnesota. None of our stations that are owned by a college or a university. They're all actually owned by a community group, the private, independent, nonprofit group. Minnesota Public Radio, in the case of Minnesota, Southern California Public Radio doesn't actually own the station. The license is held by Pasadena City College, but operated by Southern California Public Radio. In Miami, and I'll comment on that since the question was raised, not dodging your last question. There is a movement, and I won't call it a movement because that gives it too much credit, but there is a trend among colleges, universities, and school districts in this country. And I don't mean to cast any aspersion on Atlanta Public Schools by saying this. Across the country, colleges, universities, and school districts are divesting themselves of their broadcasting licenses. A year ago, I think it was 20 colleges and universities sold their radio stations. 18 of them were sold to religious broadcasters. 2 of them were purchased by a local community group and operated as a public broadcasting station. That's just the economic reality, and that's how that's happening. But when a college or a university in a community decides to sell its station and it has a non-commercial license, it's a limited number of people who can actually acquire it. We believe in strong local community institutions. In the case of Miami, we thought WLRN should buy WMCU, which Trinity University was putting up for sale. It's a full power, Class C, 100,000 watt radio station serving all of southern Florida. I don't know how many million, 5 million people under that signal down there. It's a big, big station. But WLRN, which is owned by the Dade School District, isn't in the market for buying a radio station. Can't do it. They're laying off teachers and closing elementary schools, and they're not about, the Board of Education is not about to put forward a proposition to buy a radio station just because a college, a religious college at that, decides to sell its station. WXCL, Barry University is the other large public broadcaster in southern Florida. Barry University itself was in the process of selling its radio station. So the very institutions that you would expect, those committed most to public broadcasting, those already in the public broadcasting arena, they're not either by governance or by resource able to build on the strength of what would be the local community broadcasting community to acquire that station. So Public Radio Capital, which is an independent organization that is charged with actually helping local public broadcasters acquire these stations when they do come available. Public Radio Capital called us and said, the station's being sold in Miami. Would you help us acquire it and sort of keep it in the public broadcasting family? And by the way, since you are the largest producer and distributor of classical music in America, Miami does not have a classical music station. Miami is the 12th largest metropolitan area in the United States, and it did not have a full-time classical music station. So that's why they came to us, and through their help and with debt financing, to answer the implied question of how they paid for it, by taking out a $20 million loan, we acquired that station. And we expect and trust that as the classical music's provided, that the audiences, through their membership and through the underwriting and corporate support, will help to pay the debt service, the mortgage, and operate the station. Dual format. In most communities where there is a single broadcaster or a single broadcaster of record, a signal that covers the metropolitan area best and singularly, a dual format's pretty common. It's still. In the 40 stations that we operate, we don't operate a dual format station. We've been able to differentiate our formats in three ways. We have a news format, a classical music format, and now on 3 of our stations, a format that we call the Current, which is contemporary music focused on what we think is the next generation of public radio listeners. And that's operated only in Minnesota. I have a sergeant at arms keeping track of the clock. I don't know what my timeline is here, but 1 or 2 more, is that it? Sure, over here. I don't have a crystal ball that's any clearer than anyone else. You could ask Milton the same question. He and I run into one another mostly at it seems we run into the boardroom at CPB more than anywhere else, or even John and others in the room who have that insight. But without dodging the question, Betty McCollum, who is in the Minnesota delegation, a congressman from Minnesota, is the sponsor of the CPB bill this year for a significant increase in CPB funding. So far, that's meeting with some success, although not as much as we've requested or that CPB has requested. I love what Pat Harrison, who's the CEO and president of CPB, says. She says it's high time in America that we change the question from how much, from whether we should fund CPB, which has been for 20 years the debate on the Capitol. It seems, all of you, many of you, I'm sure, have written your congressman or talked to your legislative officials to get them to support the public broadcasting bill, because someone invariably says, let's just zero it out. Let's just cut all federal funding for public broadcasting, radio, and television. Pat Harrison says it's high time we change the question from whether we should fund public broadcasting every year to how much we should increase the support for public broadcasting. That's the leader vision that she has, and I think that the $400 million plus federal dollars that go to public broadcasting, 75% of which largely goes to public television, 25% of which goes to public radio, I think that there's a strong case to be made. The strongest voices that are heard in support of this are in this room. I mean, you are the most effective advocates for increasing CPB funding. And it doesn't have to be a letter or an email or a postcard. I mean, when you bump into or you meet or you see the staff aide of one of your state congressmen or a federal official, mention it to them. Just mention how important and valuable public broadcasting is to you, or a program that had a particular impact on your family or your life. Tell them how it matters to you. Tell them how it makes a difference to you. You'd really be surprised. They don't get that kind of feedback. The mass email campaigns, the automatic emails that generate hundreds of thousands, Congress has become pretty much immune to that. You can turn on a computer and send 100,000 emails to them on any issue, and they don't really count. But man, one simple 10-minute phone call or a 5-minute conversation, even at a public gathering. State fair, I don't know if you have one here in Minnesota. We're getting ready for the state fair. All the politicians walk the grounds of the state fair, and it's a terrific opportunity to go up and shake their hands and say, thanks for voting for public broadcasting last year. That really makes a difference. So I'm very hopeful and I'm optimistic that public broadcasting will not only be funded, but the funding will be increased. I don't believe it'll be funded at the level that is needed, given the challenges and the opportunities that I've painted for what I call the erosion of great journalism and great art from the commercial media. I think the opportunity is terrific for us to step up that window of opportunity for us to really demonstrate our community value and to step into that void has never been greater. And I think some of the enlightened federal delegation certainly know that, and more of them are getting on board. So I'm hopeful that federal funding will be maintained and increased. It's important to understand that in real dollars, in inflation-adjusted dollars, federal funding for public broadcasting has been flat for the last 20 years. We have not had even we have not had more than an inflationary increase in federal funding for public broadcasting, radio or television, since 1988. Last question. I want to get you out of here on time. There was someone over here, yes. The fourth belief that we will add to this presentation before too long will really address non-broadcast media and the terrific potential that the internet or digital media or beyond broadcast media provide to public service organizations like WABE and American Public Media to really not just expand the service, but deepen the service. I mentioned to someone this morning that you have an intended audience for public media. It's all of you. We intended to reach you. We were grateful that we did. We're glad that you've come out. But there's a huge and growing unintended audience for public media, really driven by the fact that much content now, produced here and produced by others in public broadcasting, is available on the internet. It's properly tagged, and it's properly got all the metadata and all that. What's happening is that search engines, Google, is driving a tremendous amount of new consumption of public media. Someone who is an infertile couple, not in the public media audience, not public radio listeners, don't care. In fact, they may dislike public broadcasting in their community, but they're infertile. So they go to Google and they type up infertility, and lo and behold, there was a PBS special on it, and American Public Media did something on it, and American Radio Works did something on it, and all of a sudden they, sort of unwittingly, are public media audience. And they are consuming and benefiting by the programming that your gifts and your time and your talent have helped to make possible. And you know what? It's happening years after that program was broadcast. Many broadcasters, and perhaps Atlanta is another one, can give you chapter and verse on stories and programs whose internet audience now vastly exceeded any broadcast audience that it had over the time that it was available. So we believe that the internet provides a terrific opportunity for us to both deepen and expand public service to the current audiences and the intended audiences, and to audiences that we would never reach and never serve in any other way. And that's a relatively new way of thinking about public media and its power, not just for those who listen every day to the radio and make a gift during its membership drive, but who actually consume that material even when they weren't intending to, but are benefiting by it. And that's how communities are strengthened. That's the gift that you're providing to the community. You're making it possible for even those people who don't like public broadcasting to benefit by public broadcasting through new technologies. Thank you so much for having me. I'll be around a little bit longer, but thanks for having me.